All right, we
Totally.
can go on and on.
Well,
Seriously, Prong,
so
we don't want to take
that's
your
what I was
entire
going to
day
say.
because
We know you have to get to Bali. We have 4 questions from fans, from your like hardcore fans. Do you want to
Beautiful.
pick one and answer it, or do you have time for all 4?
Let's do it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
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 So, like I was saying, we had a million questions for you ourselves for selfish reasons, but because when we put out a request for we always put out a request for whoever we're going to interview to our listeners and say,
Okay.
hey, you guys got any questions for them? Well, we got a
Great.
flood of questions for you.
Yeah.
So we were like, all right,
Wow.
we're going to throw out the rest of our questions and we're just going to ask these 4, like we're saying, from your listeners and our listeners and kind of dedicate this portion to them fully. So
Yeah.
Beautiful. Let's do it.
yeah. First,
Megan Polanski.
Magic Mobber. Megan Polanski asks, what is your affiliation or resonance with Venus? Which I have no idea what your answer is going to be for these, and hopefully you know what she's talking about
Wow.
here. She says, not just
Yes,
the planet,
I
but
do.
the archetype, and how does he think this comes through his work, or comes through in his work? Does he actively cultivate this, and if so, how did this come to be?
Wow,
And then she
beautiful.
follows it up, though, because this might be hand in hand.
Part of it.
What's his relationship to wild, fresh water? Because you have a song dedicated to it on your new album.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Wow, big one. So I know we have multiple ones in the time,
Yeah.
so I'm going to try to be concise. But
Yeah.
Venus, the archetype of Venus, of course, she's connected to beauty. The goddess of beauty. She is the goddess of the feminine. I mean, truly, Aphrodite is kind of like, is talked about as like one representation, one facet, but really Venus is like the mama. And so she's definitely been a guiding light for me in many ways. And so the archetype of her is seen and reflected in not just kind of the, I guess you could say, European, zodiac and astrology from a European perspective, but also in the Vedic and in other shamanic ways. There's very old ways of connecting to the planets and the stars. And so the archetype of her from an African perspective and looking at the African diaspora, so in Brazil, we're very much mixed, right? So I have African roots, actually genetically too. My mother's grandfather is dark, so it's like that's part of our lineage. And so in Brazil we're very mixed, even though I came out very light, fair skin. My mom's super dark with green eyes, so you just see all the shades, which is another part of my whole life and self-discovery was you can't judge a book by its cover ever, and so really being that always kind of like the light kid in my family, and like everyone's like, well, did you sleep with somebody else? Like, where did you get this kid? He's adopted or something, it's been kind of ironic. And then when I came to the States, I'm like a normal looking person. I could just blend in, because I have this fair skin. So it's really kind of been a trip for me, right? So like shape shifting and what have you. But coming back to the archetype, it's Oshun. The goddess Oshun is the goddess of love. She's the goddess of beauty. She is an incredible powerhouse, and her primary element is water, and fresh water specifically. And in Brazil, we say fresh water is agua doce, and agua doce, we don't say fresh water. So it's agua doce is like agua dulce in Spanish, and dulce doce means sweet. So the sweet water. And that's something I feel like we really lose in English translation by saying fresh water, because we forget that it's the sweetness of the water of life that nourishes us, that gives all life, right? We can't drink salt water, we'll get sick. And so it's the sweet nectar of life, of all life, is the sweetness. And so Oshun, she embodies that, and she is the archetype, if you will, of that, like Venus in a way. And so what's very interesting is that Venus often isn't necessarily connected to water, at least from my understanding in that system. But I think Oshun really captures that more so. However, in my chart, my zodiac chart, which hopefully answers your question about that, if I know about that. So I have Venus, my natal chart was in the 27th degree of Pisces, which turns out, go figure, I just learned this recently, is like the most exalted, highest state of Venus. It's like her most exalted state is when she's in Pisces at the 27th degree, which is my natal chart, which maybe if you're into astrology may explain why I'm very connected to beauty and like creating things, and all about everything I'm doing is always oriented towards perceiving, seeing, creating, supporting beauty in the world. So that might answer her question.
Yeah.
But for me, the way that I grown up with it and the way I connect to her and the way my mother taught me was through the lens of Oshun. the goddess of the sweet waters. And what's really beautiful is, like the Greek gods and goddesses, if you guys are familiar with, they have different like implements, different tools or weapons. Oshun, she rolls with a mirror, and she carries this mirror. And what's really beautiful is she's very vain. There's kind of like a novella of all the orishas, the gods and goddesses. Like there's like all these stories, right, of how they did this with that one, and you know what I mean. It gets really like very human in a way, but it all has these lessons. There's all these like moral teachings, kind of like Greek gods and goddesses, right? Like so and so seduce so and so, and da 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 da, right? And so the whole funny thing about, and what I think is really cool about Oshun, is she carries this mirror. And this mirror, she's always checking herself out, and she's always like looking in the reflection of the water to see her beauty, and looking at her beauty and like, making sure she looks great. But the power of her mirror, though, is when she turns it around and she aims it back and reflects the beauty of those who gaze upon it. And in that same way, when we look into the water and we see that reflection of ourselves in the fresh water, and it's always changing, it's never the same. And so it's that same notion, recognizing the beauty within ourselves.
That's so beautiful.
It's always liquid. It's always transforming when we don't get attached to it looking some way, allowing it to. And so coming back to that, what we were talking about earlier about the mirror. And being mirrors.
That what you admire in someone else, you're only recognizing it in them because it's also in you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is truly the namaste, I recognize light, right, that we both are. And so to speak to the question about the album, the new album has a song that was captured live, one that came through to Oshun. And it's actually a very old song. It's in Yoruba, which is the language that comes from West Africa, from a lot of the groups that were brought as slaves in the history of Brazil. And so that is the language that a lot of the songs that are sung in the terreiros, which are the spiritual churches, if you will, of Candomblé or Umbanda and the various lineages they're under. I won't get into all that, but these are basically the spiritual lineages that come from Africa that have then been, mixed in, if you will, to Catholicism and syncretized and what have you. And so you see like different saints kind of mapped to these orishas and connected to them. So it's a very deep world. But these languages, like Yoruba, is very much a language of vibration. And so these words, they carry a frequency with them that connect to these deities, to these energies, right? And you can think of her as a goddess, but you can also think of her as an archetype, right? And in the way that she is an archetype, I feel like it's the same as talking about Venus. They share the common archetype of the feminine, of the beauty, And so for me, musically, I honor her and I honor the waters when I'm trying to sing, when I want to bring the energy of the water, and I'm going to speak to water, I'm talking about fresh water, sweet water.
Okay.
And so that song specifically to Oshun is a song to the rivers, and the recording that it opens up with is a field recording that I took in the Gila, and the Gila Wilderness is one of the last wilderness areas. It's in near the border with Arizona and New Mexico, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's one of the last undammed rivers in all the United States, and it is a amazing being, and she roams free, totally unhindered, unbridled, unchained, no dams, and she's just a force. So I recorded her, and I bring her into my performances often when I want to invoke those waters. And so that song very much is sung to her and sung to Oshun, who is often seen in the visions, bathing on the bank of the river, adorning herself with her mirror, and, blessing the waters, and often collecting jasmine flowers is often also associated with her. So so I hope that kind of answers that question.
Yes, beautifully.
Very beautifully. I keep having a vision of an old dream I used to have. It keeps, for some reason, coming back to me that is very much the way you're describing the river there in Gila. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that further.
Yeah.
So,
same here.
You got to go to the Gila, by the way. Anyone who's listening, and y'all, if you can, visit her. She's like, who knows, it may be a matter of time before dams and all that happen.
Well, there's a documentary called Damnation about that, about how dams are just being destroying.
They told the damn dams. So a big part of our work too, is activism.
That's the next question.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's from Megan also.
Yeah, she says, how do we share the ecstasy and learnings we take from transformational, quote unquote, transformational culture that Porangui and his music are so much a part of, and ground it into real world activism that inspires and assists people?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's actually something that we're actively working on right now. Some of my friends, dear musical friends, sisters, Rising Appalachia, I don't know if you guys know their music. They've really gotten really proficient at this, and I'm kind of following their model a little bit, where they in performances when they tour, they'll have like a working directory of like organization nonprofits in the area of where they're playing that they'll have come to the show, often set up like a table that are specifically connected to different, activist movements in that area, for instance, around water or, or around whatever it might be, environmental kind of things that are going on, so that they can immediately, when people are feeling called, after a performance, can connect right there with like, how do I take this energy and like, how do I put it into action? So we're actually actively doing that ourselves, and we're creating that database. So that's part of the new people we just hired to help us, because I've had these ideas forever, but it's like, you guys know, it's like, there's only so many hours in a day. Because for me, it's very much about the activism piece. I feel like music as medicine is an activating process, right? We're feeling the vibration activate us, help us remember our relationship to all things. And then it's like, it's not enough. It's like, now how do we then take that into form, especially right now? Because Mother Earth, Pachamama, she needs us more than ever. She really does. And all of us, we are the earth keepers. We are the guardians. The two-leggeds, the human beings. Like, we're the ones who...
We are stewarding this species forward in order to save this little...
Something that I speak to often... Oh, you broke up. Say that again?
I don't know. What did you miss?
Whatever you just said,
we're all just need to save the earth, really.
We're all on the same page here.
No, we are beautiful. I feel like one thing that the time that we're in right now is a time where humanity is really being asked to take a deeper responsibility for what we're doing on the planet, right? And ultimately, something that I feel is forgotten often is our role as fire keepers. We have a birthright, human beings. We're, of all the species on Earth, we're the only species that was gifted the understanding and relationship to fire and how to actually control fire, how to be able to manage fire, if you will. Literally our ancestors would keep embers burning, inside of old ancient mushroom caps, and would keep them burning to be able to carry fire through Siberia, through the Arctic, to keep that fire alive, to stay alive. And that same technology of like how to start a fire with our hands, like using a hand drill, a hand bow, like that connection and relationship to fire, we've forgotten. And the irony is that we are closer to fire than ever. Like literally, when we look at our technology is all fire. If you think about it, put your hand near you feel your iPhone, right? Or you feel your laptop, it puts off heat. It is literally radiating heat. It is an evolution of fire. It is all the mastery of fire that we've taken, all the fire that took into the melt the metals, to make the semiconductors, to put all of this and harness this into this device that carries this battery, this lithium ion battery, that is all chemical reactions that are connected to heat and fire. And so it's all the evolution of fire. And so I say this because I feel that more than ever, we're being asked to step into a responsibility and right relation with our relationship to fire. And that looks like now, as a modern human being, our relationship to our technology. And so if we don't claim responsibility for how we work with technology, whether that be artificial intelligence and all the deviations of like what that looks like, we are literally seeing a time where if we don't it's like harnessing this technology to illuminate the path and to illuminate the world, or using it to burn the world, because it's one or the other. And right now we're truly at a crossroads, because we're quickly accelerating. Everything is speeding up. Kurzweil talks about the singularity, where we're going to see ourselves merging with our technology. Elon Musk talks about it's a bandwidth problem. Right now it's our thumbs are like the bandwidth problem, but he's trying to basically mainline us so that the phone, the supercomputer in our hand, is immediately, interacting and you basically interfacing with our nervous system, and whatever the mind is, this emergent property of that, bloody sponge in our cranium. And so it's a really interesting time to be alive, because like literally, I played that light pump event in Austin just recently, right? Which is all about virtual reality, and they had all the VR stuff going on. And as I was checking that out, I was like, wow, I'm like seeing more and more how we are disembodied, how we are trying to like escape our body experience, how we're trying to go into this other virtual reality and kind of check out.
Yeah.
And some people, we do that through the use and abuse of medicines, if you will, right? Even plant medicine, entheogenic medicines. I feel the common thread through all of this is the invitation for us to look at practices that embody us. How can we embody ourselves more than ever? Because in doing so, we're grounding. We're grounding ourselves. And when we ground, literally, like the word says, we are connecting to the earth. We are connecting back to the ground upon which we stand, upon which we dance. And so the invitation for us, I feel, more than ever, is to ground ourselves as the fire and the technology evolves and gets faster and faster. It's like the ecstatic dance practice or your yoga practice. It's like, how do we find practices, or, even being fully present in lovemaking? How do we do that in this way that is fully empathic and fully connected, versus mediating that through these other means and disconnecting? Because what's happening is, in the disconnect, it's like what kind of happens is an apathy. I think one of the things we have to be really careful with is that we become apathetic to the world that we're leaving behind, and we're kind of like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna go to this other virtual place, and like, too bad if everything's dead there. I'm gonna just check out and go to this other
community instead of building community. Also,
right here. And so I feel like that's really the power in the invitation. So coming back to the analogy of fire, it's like, how do we harness fire as way showers and as the species on the planet? Because all those other species are basically looking at us. They're like, hey, what's up, human relatives? Please, like, can you get it together? Like, we can't wait much longer. Like, the biome is crumbling because of what we're doing with our fire, and literally like burning fossil fuels. Here's another example: burning coal to make energy, when there's this infinite energy that's in the sky, in the center of our solar system, just like, hey, hello. So we're at a big pivotal time. So the activism piece is huge. To come back to the original question, we're being invited is, how do we activate ourselves and really take action from our hearts, from an embodied action, not just like a click activism, but like, really, like, how do we show up in our family, in our life, with our kids, with our our loved ones, and in our local community? How can we show up in a bigger way and actually see, like, what's up with the watershed where I live? Like, is the water, what's up with the city water? Where's the local spring at? And is that being bottled by Nestle? Or, is there a way for me to protect that and have a relationship to that water that comes out of the earth, for free? So those kind of things, I think, are really important. And the last thing I'll just leave on this question, if I may, is I just learned about when we were in Austin, because one of my friends there, Topher Sipes is his name.
Oh, his next question.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, great.
You already know. You're just leading us to the next.
I did not know that.
I know,
I swear.
You
But
must.
they're very
someday.
passionate about what you're going to bring up about the springs. Yes. Yeah.
He just shared with me that there's a pipeline basically to
the
run
biggest ever.
Biggest ever, right through Texas, that could potentially contaminate Barton Springs,
Yes.
San Antonio, like all these beautiful treasured waters of Texas.
So many people, happy place. Yeah.
I mean, talk about, like, that's just like, true, like, we got to do something about this. So for me, like, this is one of the movements, for instance, that we're actively right now looking at. How do we kind of get the word out there and help activate people around it?
Yeah. Well, you kind of went into his question already. He asked what your recurring daily practices are. You kind of said, the ecstatic dance and the grounding, but do you have like a waking practice or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question.
He also wanted to know what your biggest challenge is that you've overcome. Those are his two questions.
Okay. Biggest challenge, like, ever? Ooh, that's an interesting one. I think my biggest challenge is, I think, an ongoing one, which is how to constantly live what I share. It's like, practice what you preach, right? And so for me, it's like, it's this really weird conundrum, I think, a paradox that happens as an artist, especially in the world we're in today, as a musician, especially, where you're expected to do all these things and, like, be on all these platforms and all this social media and all of these things, and, like, it's like, and it's very disembodied. It's like all this stuff where I'm supposed to create all this content on Instagram or whatever, right? And, like, the irony is that by doing this, I'm encouraging people to continue to be on their phones rather than staying connected, related to the environment they're in, which is actually what I'm about.
Right.
And so, and in so doing that, I have to actually also be disembodied, like, on this light box for extended amounts of time to do that. And so, and yes, it's a necessary tool in the world environment we're in, but it's like, it is the matrix itself. And so this is my biggest challenge, is on a daily practice is, what are my practices? What can I do so that I can still engage and do kind of what's expected of me in a way, but also create an alternative to that? Because I feel like, and I'm actively looking for that answer. I'm still figuring it out. And I definitely will continue to share about that. But I feel like that is my biggest challenge right now. Like literally, as we speak, just before I got on this call with you guys, I'm talking to our new team. We've just hired some people to help us because it's just so much. And, and it's weird. Like I said, like I got to create all this content that's going to be consumed, right? Again, the consumption thing. But the real magic I feel, and what really turns me on and what I feel like can really maximize people, is when people can come and we can be together on the land, like they come for a retreat or have those kind of more personal, intimate drop-ins where I can then do the work with them and create ceremony and create those kind of experiences that are embodied, if that makes sense. And it's this weird thing because we have to to reach more people and share the message. We have to
know. It's a catch-22. But I think as a seeker, you never, when you're like truly seeking to be your highest self, you never really feel like you're practicing what you preach. Because if you did, you'd feel like, it'd be kind of cocky, So like on the growth path, you never probably feel fully like you are at that place,
Have mastered it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's like it's a work in progress for sure. And I feel for myself, I mean, I'm constantly so yesterday, right? We just got off a plane from Austin. We're we have 48 hours before we have to just wash clothes, pack, and get on a plane now to Bali, right? Which is we're going to be in a whole other universe. And so what did I do? Like I have so much to do on the online and whatever and respond to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, both Ashley and I were like, okay, we're going on the land. So I just literally just put on my shoes and my shorts and just and took some water and I climbed a mountain, literally the Red Rocks. And I'm so grateful for living in a place like this where I can run out my back door and I'm in some of the most incredible earth energy ever. But that's my practice is get on the land, especially because of all the computer stuff. It's so easy to it's like this artificial sunlight, right? That we're getting off the screen. It's so easy to get sucked into that world and to disembody into the ones and zeros of, the matrix. And so it's so important. And it's my biggest medicine is to give myself permission, first of all, right? Sometimes you're guilty, oh, wait, I can't take time off. There's too much to do. But give yourself permission to literally unplug, turn it all off, and to get out on the land. And then
leave the technology at home. Don't take your phone with you. A lot of people,
because it's mediated with I have to put it on my story. And I find that same thing, I can hear my social media person being you got to take more stories or blah, blah, blah. And so it's this thing, I'm constantly in an internal battle around it. But I do believe that it's really important to give yourself those detox times. Give yourself that,
it's
digital
so detoxing. And also the nature is just being. So once you're out there with nature, it just reminds you to just be, it's like the constant reminder.
That all that electronics don't matter.
And David Bernier is the next question, kind of maybe the same, because he asked what do you do for unbound play? So that may be the same.
He says, what do you do for play besides music? For example, some people color or draw mandalas, some people stack rocks, some people just go to the gym. Yeah. What's your thing?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. What is my unbound play? I mean, I do love to draw. That's actually another medium. I love visual art as well. Done that since I was little. So that's one of them. I think all kinds of creative expression, for me, is I love everything. I love getting my hands dirty. Lately, kind of what it is for me, it's still kind of work related, but I've been working on a new rig for performing. And so I actually like to build the whole thing. Yeah. So I've been working with metal and cutting it and literally bolting things together and figuring out all the wiring and all the stuff that is not very, the engineering is not very sexy in a way. Kind of nerdy and it's super heady sometimes, but it's my hands got to get dirty and I got to put on a mask and get out a drill and it's very masculine in a way.
Yeah, it's very logically based.
Logical problem solving.
You spend
but
so much of your time in the creative with your work, with the actual music creation. So I could see why that you'd be I need a little balance on this other end of things, more logic.
It's true. So I actually love getting my hands dirty and working and building things. So I've built my whole studio. I built all the speaker stands and all the isolation, all the acoustic treatment. I do all that. I research it and then I build it myself instead of going and buying whatever.
That's so
thing.
I love that.
Yeah, it feels really the DIY. I'm all about the DIY. Yeah. Because I feel it's something, it engages this other part of us. So that's one thing. And then I would say the other is dancing. The big part of it. movement practice, exercise, of course. I really hate gyms, to be honest. I have this like love-hate thing. Like I get, it's so funny because I love On It and I'm so about like, so deep respect for those brothers and Ab and all their work over there. And it's like, I
But
hate
you
being
have this
inside the
gym
wall.
outside.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'd rather be on the land. And so for me,
Yeah.
it's like, I love going up like to like yesterday, I went up to like a bluff where I can see the whole valley,
Yeah.
right? And like getting on an edge of a rock and then doing push-ups and sit-ups and whatever body weight kind of stuff for me. Like, I feel like that feels just really much more, inspiring
Yeah.
rather than like, in this gym watching everyone on a treadmill. I don't know.
Because I don't feel like I've ever had an experience in a gym where I had any kind of like huge epiphany or a moment of quiet where I was just like,
Maybe some mind clearing, but not a download.
yeah.
You know?
And but when you hike to the top of a mountain, you sit up there and you go, oh fuck, all the pieces connect right now. Like things make sense and you can put some stuff together that you really needed to. I love that. So we have a pick your poison, which are some fun questions we ask people to send in. So pick your poison from Abigail on Instagram. She says, would you rather have mastery and the ability to apply such mastery over any and all scientific or mathematical concepts, or be able to create artistic masterpieces using any medium?
That's a great question. I guess, I'd have to go for the artistic.
Yeah.
My feeling and the reason being, I guess for myself, is that when I have sat in the abyss, if you will, or in the void, when I've had those moments of total dissolve and I've been able to connect beyond just what is my ego, those little moments where I've been able to pierce the veil, whether that be through a 10-day Vipassana silent retreat or whether that be sitting with Abuelita Ayahuasca. What always has shown me is a constant is that art is one of the most redeeming qualities of humans. I feel like it's one of the things that we truly bring to the universe that's beyond something that we need for procreation or for, making the species kind of continue or for any evolutionary reason. It's kind of exists for itself. And there's something very powerful and medicinal about that when we do it for its own sake. And I feel like that's love, because love is for love itself. It's love unto itself. And so I think at my heart, I'm a deep romantic. And so, yeah, I would say the art, making the most epic, beautiful piece that I feel in itself will embody and capture and encapsulate all the science I could ever try to figure out.
Yeah.
It already says it. Because like they say, music expresses the inexpressible. And I really believe that,
Yeah.
I just
I love that.
trying to figure out ways to embody the gray area instead of trying to be so black and white about everything. I spent most of my life trying to be really black and white, make things like yes or no, but
We're trying to embrace the gray.
later realizing
Run into the gray.
really life is
I love it. I worked in science for a while.
yeah.
That's
why we knew this was the question to ask you.
Yeah, nice. So I definitely have my deep respect for the scientific method and for all of it, of what it brings. And I feel like one thing that it's easy to get lost in is because science, most of science, and I wouldn't say all of it, but the bulk of it, at least at this time, and this is changing, has been so focused on measuring the surface and the visible, measurable world. But the irony is the most interesting things about our universe is the unseen world, not the seen world. And I feel like art is able to dip into that part of the universe, and really address it in a meaningful way, in a way that unfortunately science still doesn't have the tools quite yet to do.
Yeah.
I don't think that will be forever. I think what we're seeing is a merging of the two, and inevitably they're coming together, which is I think one of the positive things of what we're seeing with technology and AI and all these things is that there is a merging, and I think there will be positive elements of that as long as, like I said earlier, we don't burn ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
I like that because with science, the process is so needed for us to have faith in whatever the outcome is. That's how our human brains work on things. Like, okay, I see what the evidence here is to make this something that I believe in. I get that part. But the reality is that when we have these experiences that are bigger than us in life, the experiences that on our deathbed we actually recall and remember and go, remember that thing that happened and it really moved me and it brought a whole different type of faith that isn't even measurable, or a whole different type of perspective that isn't measurable or you couldn't even have seen coming. Those don't come with any kind of measured science. Those come because of our creative brain, the creative side of us that really needs to be expressed. And I think just like you're saying, Porangui, that's blending right now. It's cool to be a part of where that's going to meet in the middle. somewhere.
Totally.
Yeah.
And one thing, that people forget, because we always like listen to the studies,
Yeah.
this is double blind study and blah, blah, blah. And so, we think we give it a lot of weight. In a way, we could say science is a religion. A lot of us ascribe to it, even though like we believe in it. Like it's like God, right? It's like if science says so, then it's true. And the irony is that most science that was written just a decade ago has already been debunked by newer science.
Yeah.
And so we kind of forget that, you know what I mean? We take it just like it's like the word, the gospel, it's written in stone. And I feel like that's really kind of a shortcoming of, and I don't think it's science's fault. I think it's just how we've been socialized to relate to and think about it. And one thing that I think we often forget is that placebo is statistically real. Like placebo is over 25%. Like it's actually, when people just think that they got the medicine and they actually will heal like 25% or more of the time. I mean, that's statistically relevant, more so than a lot of drugs that have been tested out there and claimed to be effective. Placebo was actually more effective if you actually look at the studies. But of course, that wouldn't make money for the pharmaceutical companies. So you know what I mean? It's you got to really, so it's this tricky thing. And I think so much of science nowadays, honestly, and still is very much biased and very much distorted because of, private interest groups.
Money. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, that's again why I love art, because art can hit you right there, can take you right there, and it's for its own sake. I mean, people try to sell art and make it into a, profitable thing, but like, I'll tell you what, I didn't get into music to make money. Obviously, I could have done a lot of other things. It's like, this is a labor of love. I haul all this equipment, like to Bali, we're going to have 5 cases of gear that I have to take there to do what I do.
That's where I first fell in love with ecstatic dance, by the way, is in Ubud.
Beautiful. Yeah. Ubud. We're going to be right there. Yeah. And it's, and just to say, like, it's so funny, all my DJ friends, who are many of my peers, like Amani is a great example. Amani from Desert Dwellers and the other project we're on together. He's an amazing artist, and he's also a talented musician, but he's really a producer. Like, that's his powerhouse. And, putting sounds together and then producing. And he's a DJ, right? That's how he performs that live. He doesn't really play an instrument live per se. And so he's always laughing. He sees me with all my setup. He's like, bro, you just need to just DJ. He's like set up in 10 minutes, and I'm there for like 2 hours and a sound check and the whole thing. And so it's this funny thing, but like every time it's like, he gets it though. Like he sees like what I'm bringing and he's like, you're doing the thing. It's the hard road for sure.
Hard, but it's worth it.
But it's worth it. I think there's something to be said, like I said earlier, with the timbre, the frequency of these instruments and bringing them in the space where the actual people there, we're like creating this live in the moment. And I feel like that's the magic of music that we've largely forgotten about because of the advent of recording and experiencing it all through like our earbuds or whatever, that we can just have music at any moment. But our ancestors, that wasn't the case. I mean, only 100 years ago, if you wanted music, it was like a thing. Like everyone had to be together around a fire, and it was a ceremony. It was like special, like grandma and grandpa and the grandkids and everyone like, getting down. Like that was like healing, right? It wasn't just like, I'm just going to put in my earbuds and like I can just turn it on while I'm on the plane or.
Just another layer of proof that all that hard work you put into bringing 5 cases of gear to Bali or wherever you go and take your music is the fact that these people who wrote these questions in really feel that. That's why these questions just by themselves, the way that they're asked and what they're asking is like, they really have felt a connection with you, and it's because of all the effort you've put forward. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So quickly, there's a few short questions we like to ask everyone.
This is how we end the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
First off, if you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
What would I say? Little Poranguinho, seja feliz, sem medo, por alegria. To my little self, be happy, feel the happiness, feel the joy, and without fear. Just don't have fear. It's all going to work out.
Oh.
Yeah, I think Bob said it best, Bob Marley.
Yeah. Like I needed to hear that right now.
I know.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's all going to work out. Because in the end, we are nature. There's no separation. It's an illusion. And so in the end, if it does, no matter how this all plays out, I think our trajectory right now on the planet, I think it ultimately, in the grand scheme of the stars and even the life of our beautiful home Earth, I feel that ultimately it's energy and light, and we're going to go back to light, and we might do this all over a few times. Who knows? Maybe we are right now in a multiverse, depending on how you want to look at it, and there's science to show that. So I think ultimately, the most powerful thing is to remember, I think, the words of many of our greatest teachers, and that is to be kind to one another. Remember to be kind. That's the most important thing.
That's our slogan, be a light. Same thing. Just be
a
kind.
light. Be kind, be that mirror, but be kind, be compassionate, have that compassionate heart. That's so important, whether it's to our relatives, all relatives, not just humans, again, not just the two-leggeds, but all creepy crawlies, the swimmers, the flyers, our cats, our dogs, our fish, all of these beings. Be kind to them, they're so humbly and loyal, like a dog, it's like they're there even if we scold them, we hit them, or we do abusive things to them, they still love us unconditionally. They're there teaching us, not because they're stupid, but because their spirits are more evolved in that way. They're literally they're holding that patience of like
a child.
I think it might even start with just being kind to ourselves.
Well, it does, absolutely. I mean, that is the beginning. And beautiful.
If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
One book. Gosh, there's so many good books. That's a hard one.
I know.
Hard one. But if I had to say, probably one of the biggest books I think that really resonate with me is a book by Paulo Coelho called Alquimista, The Alchemist.
Really?
Yeah.
I've read it a couple times.
That's our most recommended.
But it's our most recommended book.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Probably out of 30 guests we've had on, probably a third of them have said The Alchemist.
Yeah. It's timeless. I think he hit it on the head. A lot of the tropes that I feel really weave together everything we've been talking about here. Yeah. He's a maestro, and he's brasileiro.
Yeah. And you receive something different each time.
Every time. But you know what I recognized reading it this last time was that it doesn't resonate. I think it probably doesn't resonate with people as deeply until you're on your path. When you're on your path, you're like, yes. You see, you feel so affirmed every page,
It's a romantic book too. I love it.
It is a romantic. Okay, so since that one's so recommended, here's my next on par with it is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Yes.
I really recommend.
Only 2 guests have recommended that one. But the first time someone recommended it, I almost fell on the floor. And I
would recommend people, whoever, if listeners, look it up. I know it exists. I just don't know where to find it. But there's a documentary film. There was a film. It's not necessarily a documentary, but it was a film, and it was made of the Prophet, and it's amazing. I actually watched it with Ashley at a transformational film festival that happens in Sedona every year called Illuminate Film Fest, which I highly recommend to people to check out. Yeah. It's like one of the first ones of its kind. It's been going for some years now, but they bring like the most like highest like consciousness related films that are.
I've heard of it, but we're about to go to Mountain Film, which is all documentaries. It may be somewhat, probably not as conscious, but at least it's all about social justice and things like that. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And what's cool about this film festival is that everything that they do, they pair with experiences. Actual
that's amazing.
But then so if it's a movie like about a guru, Rinpoche or something like that, then they'll actually bring in someone to like do a whole experience with people and take them through meditation, for instance. Or I've played music for some of the performances of the shows, but
out there.
She's noting it right now. I see her.
I am.
Yeah. Note it down. Illuminate Film Festival. They're beautiful people. It's all locally run, and that's in Sedona, so you can come see us if we're around. But I was gonna say is that when we were there, it's a few years ago, so I know it's out. I'm not sure what channel it's on, but look for it. There's an old film called The Prophet that's based on the book, but it's like an older, like I think from the 70s or 80s or something, which is so. But the one that I'm talking about, it's a new one, and it's all animation. And the deal is each of his stories, how he organizes it into different little stories within The Prophet, like The Prophet on marriage or The Prophet on blah, 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 blah. So each one of those is, I have a different animator who actually animates them into a visual like journey. And so it's the spoken word of the Prophet being read, but with this visual, like amazing journey. Each one's by a different animator, different artist.
Wow.
So they have like their own. Oh man, I was in like tears were squirting out of my eyes. Like, I mean, like it's really good. It's really.
I'm gonna try to watch that tonight.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. And then send me where you find it.
And the link to all of us.
Okay.
Cool. So if you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would that be?
May your eyes only see beauty. May your heart only beat beauty. May your voice only speak beauty. May you always walk in beauty.
I love that. Growing up, my favorite quote was similar by Audrey Hepburn. For beautiful eyes, look for the good in others. For beautiful lips, speak only words of kindness. And for poise, walk with the knowledge that you're never alone. That was my favorite growing up. So beautiful. Thank you, Porangui.
Thank you.